Think apprenticeships are just for school leavers?
Think again.
In Wales, apprenticeships are for everyone.
Age 16 to 66 at any stage of their career.
From digital skills to management qualifications, ACT training offers pathways in over 30 sectors.
And the best part, they're fully funded, with tailored delivery to suit your needs.
Ready to boost your career or grow a team?
Visit acttraining.org.uk today and discover the power of apprenticeships.
Hello and welcome to Full Wales, See Wales, sponsored by ACT Training, with me, Mel Owen.
Me, Robin Morgan.
And me, Will Hayward.
How are we doing?
Good, I really put on a phone voice for that one.
I really liked it.
Did you?
Did you ever have to answer the phone for your parents, like the phone in the hallway and stuff?
Yes, and you had to do the first bit of the phone number. Like,
I never did that. Were you one of those households?
Yeah, we were one of those. Yeah, we did like the bit of the phone number as if those people hadn't just dialed it in and know exactly who they've rung.
27642.
Yes, that. I did that. I did it very well.
Funny.
I'd get very excited.
Did people used to confuse you for your mum? Like they'd call up and go...
Yeah, that still happens now, actually, to
Really?
be fair. Yeah, like if my grandparents ring, they're like, Donna?
Yeah.
The other one. And then I got very excited. When my dad first started his business, he'd run it from the house. And if he was like in the bathroom or something, I'd run to answer that phone. And I'd be like, answering as, his secretary.
I love
8.
that. I love that. This is what my kids aren't having to answer the phone.
No, they're not answering your tweets.
Yeah, I should. I mean, some of the replies I send.
They could be.
Maybe I should get them to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good rite of passage for kids, though. Becoming a secretary.
Yeah, my primary school was so small, so there was only at the most when I was at 18 pupils, 18.
Wow.
And
the entire school, not just the class.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'd have years. I don't know what it is in English, like reception.
Yeah.
Reception 1 and 2 were in one class, 3, 4, 5, and 6 were in another class.
Right.
And if you were in year 6, every day somebody would be chosen to answer the school phone. So when the school phone rang, one of us would like run and go in. It was such a good day when it was
That's
you.
amazing.
That's quite cool.
Yeah, it was such a good day.
How often was the school phone being rung?
Oh, a good 3-4 times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd find out gossip from like...
Such gossip.
Yeah.
Especially if it was like another parent.
Yeah, exactly.
They were
Calling in
ringing-
sick for a kid or something.
Yeah. Or they'd be like, I can't come and collect him today, and she's crying, and you're like, they're getting a divorce. That's what's happening.
Going to tell all the class this.
Yeah, I'm going to go back in like...
Come in the Bloythenines. I'm going to tell you something, yeah?
It's time for you to learn some things about your mum and dad. They're separating. And you know I did as well.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know I did.
100%.
Yeah. But yeah.
I often think I'd make a really good GP's receptionist. I think I've got that energy.
I actually think you would, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, well, you do stuff on like BBC Radio Wales, don't you? And like a lot of that is making people very comfortable.
Oh no,
happy
I
to
think
sit
it
and
from the
listen.
other way. I think I'd be really good at asking people what's wrong with them, and then and then giving them an appointment in 6 weeks' time.
Oh, urgent, you say? Okay, we've got some space in May.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Tell me what's wrong with you? No, I'm not medically trained.
Yeah.
That's gross.
disgusting.
That's absolutely gross.
I can't believe you told me that. Have some self-respect.
You're on speakerphone. That's really gross.
Yeah. Well, it is like, do you know when you like go to A&E and they're like, oh, is this your address? You're like,
Yeah, be cool.
be cool.
It's an STI, be cool.
Like, shut the no GDPR whatsoever. Yeah, you have herpes and you live at number 12.
Yeah, is Hepatitis Robin here? Let's not make that a nickname for the next live show.
Yes.
Pet Rob.
Pet Rob. Pet Rob.
Changing your name in my phone right now to Hepatitis Robin.
Potatoes are.
Yeah.
But anyway, politics. Yeah, what's going
Indeed,
on?
yeah, absolutely. You are fresh / not fresh as a daisy, but you're fresh from winning a new journalism award, right? Congratulations.
Cheers.
Congrats.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. I was in London yesterday for the Regional Press Awards, and
The original press award, is that what it's called?
the regional.
The regional. I thought it was like the OG press award.
Anyone who's ever read my journalism knows there's nothing original. It's absolutely ripped off journalism.
I think the idea of like an original journalist being like one of the people with like long coats and hats who run into phone boxes and go, what a scoop! Like those.
What do you say about that, eh?
Yeah, exactly. That's the OG journalist.
Before I met you, well, that's exactly what I thought you'd
Yeah.
be like.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, come on, boys, let's get some pictures.
Yeah,
But
yes.
yeah. I need Spider-Man on my desk. That sort of thing.
I did wear a trilby for quite a while.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was a trainee, and like kind of a long kind of coat, which I hoped would like flutter as I went around corners.
Yeah, sure. I love that. But you did win Scoop of the Year, right?
Scoop of the year. Hack of the year. It was my work at Wales Online. So the stuff we did on the Vaughan Gethin donations, where we revealed that the company that made the big donation to him had applied to build a solar farm on the same day they made the donations, and that application would require Welsh Government approval. And that was part of a series of stories that ultimately led to him stepping down.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Well, congrats.
Thanks, mate.
Well done.
Like quite a few awards for that particular story, haven't you? This is not the first one.
My probably biggest skill as a journalist is doing one good piece of work and then just dining out on awards for about a year with it. It's basically my main skill.
Yeah.
Nice though.
But
also, doesn't that go to prove how big of a news story that actually was and how it just didn't get any traction over the border really at all?
Yeah.
But like this proves how much of a big story it was.
if that had been Scotland, everyone would still talk about it. But now everyone's just like, no one really notices or cared.
No.
Part of that was the election, but main part of that is because Welsh news is not actually considered that interesting in the wider UK.
Yeah.
And that is why we're going to talk about media today.
What a good link.
Guys, the last 6 weeks we have been busting myths about apprenticeships.
Boom, boom, boom. That was busting.
There are no
Busting.
more myths to bust. We have busted everything. It's what we go to school for.
Busted.
That was such a good little reference.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
Fight star, sorry.
I think the thing with apprenticeships, which we have learned, is that they are not just for boys. Most people who went onto apprenticeships were women. They are not just the traditional fields that you would expect people to go into. They are not just for young people. Older people can do it. And you would be amazed at the range of different things that people can go into apprenticeship, earn while they work and upskill. And it's a way for employers to improve their people.
Genuinely, I'm not just saying that. It has opened my eyes to it. Like, it's amazing the kind of things that you assume are apprenticeships and, the things that lead into it. So thank you, Will. And thank you, ACT Training.
We're talking about the media in Wales, and I think quite often, firstly, it's defining like what the media is, because the amount of times I hear people who use the phrase mainstream media, and every time someone says that, they have no credibility in my eyes whatsoever, because it's such a meaningless phrase. It's like the phrase woke, like mainstream media.
Yeah, who are they?
Well, what they normally mean...
Who is she?
Who is she?
She, one of the kids.
Yeah.
That was Big Brother from like 2002.
Nikki Graham, peak Big Brother. May she rest in peace.
She. I say that roughly once a week.
Me too.
And what a day. Don't even know who did that, but that's just...
What's that?
Nikki Graham.
Was it also Nikki Graham?
What a day?
Yeah.
What was What a Day? I don't know that one.
I don't know.
What a day. And it's in an Essex accent. I don't know who it is.
Was it Only Ways Essex kind of stuff?
Could be. I don't know. But yeah, me and my friends
Gavin and
use
Stacey.
Who Is She and What a Day
Lovely stuff.
weekly.
Lovely stuff.
So when people talk about mainstream media, what they're normally doing is annoyed at a few right-wing tabloids.
Sure.
And that can be often what they're talking about, because the mainstream media has got this narrative. Often when they say mainstream media, or what even annoys me even more, legacy media.
Oh, wow.
When they talk about legacy media. That's
What is that?
Well, people talk about, Elon Musk talks about legacy media. You have people on the right of politics and on the left of politics talk about legacy media, and it's essentially news organizations that do things they don't agree with. And what they normally say they'll mean is like older publications, like more traditional publications, but also they'll lump GB News in, even though that's existed for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about media, it's quite important to define what we're talking about, because you could be talking about a trade magazine, a car industry trade magazine, or you could be talking about The Guardian, or you could be talking about The Express, you could be talking about The Mirror, you could be talking about the BBC. There's such a wide range of things in media. Like,
I always think that when you say mainstream media, it surprised me when you said about like the right leaning papers. I always assume that when people criticize the mainstream media, it's the BBC and The Guardian.
Well, this is the thing. It's like that phrase woke. It doesn't mean anything. It just means something different to every other person. It just doesn't function as a word.
So it's somebody who, whichever side, they're annoyed at the other side, so the other side is mainstream media.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a lot of criticism of the media. And there are legitimate reasons, I think, to criticize any industry. But I think what we do a lot is we tend to. I mean, I get it all the time where people are annoyed with me if the journalism I'm doing happens not to correspond with the worldview they have at that time.
Sure.
Like people have gone with the Vaughan Geffin stuff. Well, this is really, really fantastic journalism. And then I'll do something around Artie Davis, and they're like Labour hack. It's just pro Labour hack.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
just like, yeah.
And do you think that's because we're all so within our algorithmic bubbles that we can consume the media that we want, so that anytime you see something outside of that, it's, well, this isn't good because otherwise it would be conforming to my worldview?
Yeah.
Such a good point.
Yeah. I think it's happy. It's
Point of the year at the Journalism
That's a great point, Steve. I mean, there are news outlets which have editorial slants and editorial agendas, and that is without a doubt the case. What I want to just ask you about, actually, what was your question?
It was, do you think that people criticise you for certain journalistic stories you do because it doesn't conform to their worldview, because everyone's in these bubbles? I suppose, not to answer my own question, what you just said in terms of like traditional legacy media has always had a view. Like the Daily Mail has always been on the right of politics, right?
Yeah.
Like I know, obviously, the Telegraph, the Times, they've always had, this is when people say like, oh, you can't trust the media. But newspapers have always had an angle, right?
Yeah. I mean, and some newspapers have tried to define themselves as not having an angle.
Like the Independent.
Yeah. But often that can actually come across just quite dull. I mean, the Independent, I think, still endorsed parties ahead of elections and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. And who owns the Independent now?
Yeah, I think part of the problem is there is a complete lack of understanding among many people about what news gathering is as a process. I think people think there is just what is happening. There is like the vidi printer of news, and journalists just spin it. And they don't realise that actually, though most stories don't exist without that person finding the story, or at least someone finding the story in the first place. So that was what never really appealed to me about sports journalism, not least because I like my Saturdays, and I don't, if you're a sports journalist, you work Saturdays.
Yeah.
But if I was a sports reporter, if I don't cover that football match, nobody's going to go, oh, what the hell happened there?
Yeah.
Like it's going to be made aware. Whereas with the journalism I like doing is, and it's not just me, there's lots of other types of journalism that do this. You can find you're doing something saying, if I didn't exist, that story wouldn't be told. And that is quite exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you guys get your news?
Online, I'll be honest with you, but I will. So I subscribe to like some papers online, so I'll pay so I can just read it as a copy. I am such a geek, and that I read the Eye every day because I absolutely adore doing crosswords. Like I adore doing the
Eye
concise
puzzles
crossword.
are amazing.
So good.
I do the Futoshiki.
Yes, I love it.
I do the Stokus. I like the Minesweeper.
Yes, I love it. So I buy it for the puzzles, but I feel like I've got to read the bloody newspaper now, haven't I? Otherwise I can't just do it and throw it away. So I do read that. I do subscribe to some online, but I'll have a cheeky scroll on X and I'm having a look and I see what I see, but then I probably do fall into that trap of, the algorithm knows what I want to see and I just see that. And I would say I'm somebody who tries to read things that I know I'm going to disagree with in order to have a broad brush of a spectrum of, what I'm consuming. But I do fall into that trap of getting most things online.
Yeah, I think so. My dad asked me that about 5 years ago. Where'd you get your news? Because he's, born in the 50s, a man who, when I came down from waking up in the morning, he'd be at the table reading the paper, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, I get a lot of my stuff online. Like Mel, I subscribe to a couple of different news sites. But I think when I started writing topical comedy for Radio 4, which would have been like 10, 12 years ago, I started to read, every day I would read BBC News, Guardian, Times, Telegraph, Indie, and I'd go on all the different websites. So then, from a joke writing point of view, I would have more understanding of a story. And whenever I read a story, it was every basically sentence in a news article was, in my mind, a setup for a joke.
Sure.
So that's how I wrote jokes, and I think I've just continued that news reading thing. So I've got like a news folder on my phone there, and I've got the main ones there, and I'll basically just go through those. But then occasionally X, I like reading the Independent's website because I love pop-ups. Anything unreadable is great for me.
Well, I noticed none of you said the Will Hayward newsletter, but
we get it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
week. This is where I get my news from, guys. You're hearing it in real time, and I just give an opinion I form 20 seconds later.
So
not even a lie.
where do you get Welsh specific news?
So I'm on BBC Cymru View, so I will have a look, and I do enjoy reading.
You're kind of within it, aren't you? A little bit more than
Yeah.
lots of people, aren't you? Both of you.
Yeah, 100%. Because I also think with comedy and the type of comedy that we do, we need to be on top of it.
Yeah.
For starters. But yeah, I think that the Welsh language news team at the BBC do a really good job, and I think they cover things that are national but also localised and specific.
Yeah.
I still subscribe to my my local newspaper back at home, the Cymru News. Shout out.
They were nominated yesterday.
Were they?
Yeah, I think they might have won something.
Oh, I hope so.
It's all kind of a blur after a certain
Yeah,
point.
but I think there's a lot to be said for those smaller ones they will hone in on topics that are really specific. You know what, we spoke about the building, like the house building in North Wales and that type of thing. That probably wouldn't make the larger platforms, but when you do look at the specific papers, I think there's some great news stories in there.
Yeah, and it's about what is affecting people's lives, right?
Yeah.
Sort of when I did work experience at Wales Online in 2009 or 10, I was plotting potholes on Google Maps, but that's because potholes affect people's lives.
Yeah,
yeah.
right? Like
Exactly.
these small things that you might think,
Yeah.
it affects people's lives.
Yeah, local news. Like I think I've been based in regional news most of my career, and I think even though I hate just talking about Wales as regional news,
Yeah,
but
sure.
in that kind of context, I suppose that's how it'd be defined. It does really, really matter to people, and that hyper local stuff. Like if you're a journalist, I think every journalist has an ego. If they tell you they haven't, they're wrong. But I think what you most want as a reporter is something that makes an actual meaningful difference, and and that's journalism that's read is really important. And there's a real kind of snootiness around news organisations trying to get views and clicks, and it's seen as a really bad thing. But if you talk about newspapers trying to sell newspapers, you don't have the same thing. And obviously, it's how you sell stories and stuff like that. But for me, the great thing is if you are a local reporter and you do something, it's easier to make a meaningful change as a local reporter than it is as a national reporter.
Interesting.
Because if you do a story on health, you might change UK health policy, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do something on actually this new estate that they've built has, meant there's huge flooding lower down their village because they've concreted over a field, that is actually a really, really impactful story, and that can make a difference. So it's quite exciting. In Wales, the media landscape gets criticised being quite thin. Mm-hmm. So you've got Wales Online, which is like the big one, up to 2 million views a day, country of 3 million. Some of those are outside of Wales, but big audience. You've got BBC Wales, BBC Cymru. And as you say, Cymru View have actually won quite a lot of awards for their journalism. You've got more local publications like the South Wales Argus. You've got the Daily Post in North Wales. You've got the Evening Post South West Wales. You've got Nation Cymru. There's loads, Scholar. There's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah.
But people do, especially with Wales Online, people do like a criticise. How do you find the Wales Online site?
I find it like any other reach site.
Yeah.
It's quite again, I'm quite in it, so I can see, that's a sponsored thing there, and I understand they need to, I remember years and years ago, I think it was Jim Waterston, who's formerly of The Guardian, I think he's left now.
He's now starting a London
paper, right? Yeah. But when he was BuzzFeed's, I want to say culture editor, or quite big up at BuzzFeed, he was saying that out of all the regions that BuzzFeed was, when at BuzzFeed's peak, one of the only regions that in the UK that BuzzFeed wasn't getting the same clicks was Wales, because Wales Online was basically, that was the model that they were working towards. They do some brilliant journalism, right? I think it's sometimes hard to navigate, but I feel like I follow a lot of the Wales Online journalists on social media, and I get and occasionally on the website I click, on the Safari, or what you can just do show reader, so it's just plain text.
Shows no
nice.
adverts.
Yeah. So I sometimes do that.
Yeah. I suppose on my first glance, I think of it as being quite clickbaity. There's a lot of stuff on there that, not sound old. You're like, is this news? There'll be like, I don't know, shop has a new panini flavour and everyone's gone mad about it, and I get a bit like, okay. But then can
you tell me about that afterwards?
Yeah, 100%. Tuna melt spoilers. But then when you get past that, and I understand why it has to be there at the end of it, I do understand. But when you get past that, like you say, there is some great journalism on there, and I think maybe the branding, it feels less trustworthy than someone like you go to the BBC, and I think not everybody shares this view, obviously, but I trust what the BBC say. I give it, it's factual. Whereas I feel like my first instinct with the Wales Online is to question. Mm-hmm. And I just think that is because for me it feels more tabloidy. Mm-hmm. But that could be fair or unfair.
Yeah, I think so. From a kind of model point of view, like your local newspaper, that cover price you used to pay didn't really touch any of the sides when it came to how much money they made. They, like, back in the 80s, 90s, even early noughties, they were making so much money, newspapers, like so profitable. And it wasn't because of what you paid for the newspaper. It was because all of the adverts in it. It was, your classifieds, your houses for rent, looking for dates, selling your car, all of this stuff. You go in an event, you're putting it in there. All of that stuff has just gone elsewhere. Like Tinder takes the dating. Things like Gumtree take a lot of it. Rightmove, the property section, the property pull-out used to be a massive part of it.
Yeah,
all that gone, and now that's why they keep upping the prices of how much newspapers are, because essentially that's how they make the money.
Yeah,
there's been, once the internet kind of became this thing, the vast majority of publishers put everything online for free because they're like, we've got to grow online. And I think that conditioned people not to pay for journalism.
Yeah.
And that was a real problem, because they're giving it away for free and they had to monetize it. And how do you monetize it? You monetize it through ads. Ads online are just not as good. So there's all other models that you can do. Reach went really hard. So Reach was Mirror Group, Trinity Mirror. It owns like the Mirror, the Express, loads of publications, Wales Online included. They've gone big into the advertising side. The challenge is they get compared to places like the Mail and the Sun and the BBC, and for different reasons it's quite hard to compare, because obviously the BBC gets given money every year through the license fee, so they don't have to have adverts. The Mail and the Sun don't have the same economic pressures because they are owned privately, whereas Wales Online, Reach is a PLC. They've got shareholders. They have to make profit. They've also got, historically, they've got loads of issues. So because a very few journalists phone hacked, like decades ago, they're still paying millions and millions and millions in damages for that.
Oh, is that within Reach?
Well, it was Mirror and stuff. And
right, yeah.
It wasn't just them, but they were one of the ones found to have done it. So, every year there was redundancy rounds. It was like because a few pricks from a company which didn't even own us at the time, we were still paying that off.
Yeah,
There's
wild.
Also issues with like pension deficits and stuff. So whereas I was paying Reach was paying like 50 million before it even started the year in all these damages. Anyway, so the other issue is so they're trying to monetize online news. It's quite tricky. I can only kind of speak for Wales Online. I can't speak for the whole of Reach. The people I worked with at Wales Online were fucking good. I saw it all the time where people were like, this is London news. I'm like, fucking hell, the two most senior people in the newsroom when I started were Welsh speakers, like first language Welsh speakers. Like, piss off. Like,
and what were they saying was London news?
Well, because it's Reach, and the Western Mail historically had that kind of thing, a voice of the English kind of thing, going back like decades and decades and decades. Right. And it was seen as not pro-Welsh, pro like Wales. But there has been a perception that Wales Online is like because it's part of Reach, it isn't Welsh. And that's quite frustrating, because the amount of people who would say, I saw something on Wales Online, wasn't even in Wales. And I was like, yeah, but people in Wales aren't exclusively interested in things that happen within Wales. If there was a shooting in Manchester, people wouldn't go, don't give a shit. If it's in Wrexham, now I do give a shit.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that Wales Online never gets anything wrong. I'm not, no one does. And obviously there are things you like to think, maybe that wasn't the best way to do something. I don't know why I'm sitting here defending it, because I don't work there anymore. But I do think that people who get annoyed with Wales Online and say, we need more effective Welsh-based media. I'm like, well, actually, they're one of the only companies, one of the only news organisations that has made it work, that has actually managed to make money and employ journalists. So maybe don't see them as the big problem. Maybe see them as actually people who are managing to make it work. Because we had things like The National. Do you remember The National?
Yeah.
And that didn't work financially.
I was a columnist in The National.
Were you?
Yeah, I was. I had a weekly column. Whatever I wanted.
What was your favourite?
I did one that went viral, not in this country, but in the US. It was really weird, the time difference. It went viral overnight. So I woke up and my phone was like boiling hot. And I think it was actually touches on something we spoke about in the last episode. I think that talking about Meghan Markle, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I cannot remember what had sparked something that week. And I think it might be when Jeremy Clarkson said he'd like to stone him in the street or something like that. And I basically just went in being like, if you hate her this much, you're a racist. And obviously people on both sides of the argument went crazy. So that was very much my favourite one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But no, I really enjoyed being a columnist.
Nice. I mean, it's original news. Like, you'll write such good stuff and no one will give a shit. And then you'll write something like, one time we got a call when I was a trainee into our newsroom and a woman had gone, I gave birth like 3 days ago and I had to go to a doctor's appointment in Cardiff and I parked my car somewhere and my baby brain I've left and I don't know where my car is and I can't find it and I know, and can you help? And we were like, fuck it, yeah, let's do a story on this.
I'm clicking on that straight away.
So basically my job was, she told me, gave us the reg, they gave us the make of car and the colour. And she was like, I think she said, I was at Cardiff Royal Infirmary and I know I walked for about 10 minutes. So we had like a 10-minute radius around Cardiff Royal Infirmary and I was on my bike cycling around trying to find this woman's car. And we did it. We like live tweeted it as like the search for the car.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so here for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's like a rom-com.
It's so fun.
No, she's just had a baby.
Yeah. But the father abandoned her and then Will came in and found the car with his trilby on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
baby.
a car flapping in the wind. It's a Ford Cortina.
And
He's
like,
a road that couldn't be pinned down for decades. Yeah.
you could have so much fun. Like I remember doing a piece and like we wanted to do a thing about commuting into Cardiff and like how that was hard. So we were like, we basically went to one of our journalist houses, which was in Whitchurch, like North Cardiff. And there was 5 of us and one of us ran in and one of us cycled in, one of us caught the bus, one of us drove, and then one of us got the train and we saw who got to the office first and we kind of wrote it up as like a kind of, and
Like race around the world.
it was, I ran and I came second to the cyclist, which
I bet you're really smug.
I was pretty smug, but the cyclist like did me on like the final stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that's the storyline in one of the Thomas the Tank Engine books. They have a little race.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Which ones are involved?
I think the trains.
Percy, Thomas, Gordon, James.
I feel like Thomas is racing. I want to say a bus called Bertie, and Bertie hits some traffic lights like the absolute cunt.
Yes!
Keep that in.
Keep that
That is not going anywhere.
So hard.
So unnecessary.
No.
You
It's
told us
brilliant.
last week you were doing a kids comedy.
Yeah, can't wait for the kids. Do you know what? I always really fancied Percy. Percy was one of my first
Percy. gonna pull Percy out.
and Milo from the Tweenies. And what have they both got in common? They were both the bad boys of the series. It's really set a precedent for
I
the
was
rest
so
of my
different.
life.
I quite fancied Annie and Clarabelle Thomas's carriages.
Did you?
You should. I don't want to mansplain your crushes. James was the bad boy, the red one.
Really?
red one.
But
He was
Percy
the-
was a bit
He was the
cheeky.
one who got bricked up inside the
Yeah.
inside the tunnel.
No, but I
Producer
did.
Daryl's nodding.
Like, yes, you're right.
So yeah, with media, one thing I think people don't realise with Wales is because we are so much newer politically than Scotland in terms of we haven't had like we say a lot of times Wales didn't have a capital until like the 1950s.
Yeah.
So we haven't had the same media build-up around us that Scotland has. And so kind of, I feel like in terms of coverage of devolution, we're still running to catch up. It's hard to fund local journalism, especially because so many people in Wales are much more kind of London media, in that London media bubble in terms of where they get their news compared to other parts of, like, for instance, Northern Ireland or Scotland.
Yeah.
May I ask a question in terms of when you were at the Wales Online, like, mind you, I suppose Wales Online never really had these types of stories. I suppose what I'm asking is, when I look at really horrible news stories that are like Beyonce's put on all this weight, like, what a pig, like, someone's written that.
Yeah.
And we're meant to believe that is journalism. And, how, when somebody's at journalism school, are there people who go, I really want to write horrible stories about famous people? Or is that something that you think, I'll do it and it will build me up into what I actually want to do? Like, who are these people?
I'll answer in 2 parts. So, yeah, Wales Online doesn't do that sort of
No.
stories. I remember one of the first scoops I got was, do you remember Do you remember when you'd go to clubs and there'd be a photographer, and the next morning you'd go on and see all the pictures from the night out?
Yeah.
There was a picture from a nightclub in Swansea, and there was a guy in the background who'd clearly picked up a mirror and was stealing it.
That is funny. Though.
It was really, really funny. And he was in the background. He was like, and so my editor was like, "Gotta do a story on this. This is really funny." So I rang the nightclub, and they were like, "Yeah, he's a nightmare. He just keeps stealing things. Like he keeps coming every week, and like we don't know how he gets in, and he just steals things and runs out with it." And I was like,
So funny.
"This is really, really funny." So I tried to track him down, and like this is like my kind of first couple of months in journalism. I was looking for him, and I basically found some people in a picture with him earlier. I found their Facebooks. And they were tagged in it, and I went on their Facebooks and I went through their friends and found him in their friends. So I found him through that, and then I saw where he worked. So I got a number through that, and I got his number by ringing up and saying, "Can I just have X's number?" And I basically rang him and said, "Look, we're doing a story on this. You know, the club has said you've repeatedly stolen things. Do you want to comment on this? Because always give people a right to reply." And basically, he said, I just started crying and was like, "I'm really sorry. I just become a bit of a dick when I drink. Please, I've just got a job. Please don't do this." And it's like, well, I mean, on one side, this man is literally stealing things from nightclubs, and local businesses are telling us he's a nightmare. He keeps stealing things.
Yeah.
On the other side, the guy was 20.
Yeah.
And if you put him on Wales Online, everyone's going to see it.
Forever, yeah.
His name, when he had a fairly distinctive name, he was always going to come up.
Mr.
He just got a job.
Man.
Yeah. The man in the mirror. It's me.
Yeah.
And we had a discussion, and we just decided, fuck it, we're not going to do it. And it was
Interesting.
And it was basically because we had a chat, and I said, if you took the worst thing I've ever probably done on a night out, from when I was a fresher through to last night, everyone would look a dick if you take like a time they were really pissed when they were 20.
This is what I feel about what Gen Z have basically gone through, where living their entire lives online, especially with it being potentially like sort of live streamed and like on Snapchat, like their nights out being chronicled. Like it's so hard for them to have made a mistake and fucked up, as we all do, and you learn from your mistakes. But if it's out there constantly, how do you not live your life through fear, like thinking that this is going to happen?
Yeah, it makes me go cold thinking if I'd had Instagram stories when I was 17, like it'd been awful. I was just that's still that generation that took a digital camera on a night out. When I was starting to go out when I was like 16, like
next morning you'd put your SD card in
and upload 52
Tag
photos.
away. Have a folder called like Wednesday at Oceana or something. Yeah.
And it was so I
get
love
tagging, girlies.
that I was in I was in that generation. I love that. But none of us looked hot.
Yeah.
And when I look back at this is not the point, but I started going out when I was like 15, 16. And I looked 15, 16.
Sure, yeah.
Those bouncers letting me in, didn't knock it.
Skirt over jeans?
Yes, skirt.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to be honest, looked like a prostitute. Like, I was like, this makes me look older. I look like a sex worker. Yeah. Like the heels, like, so, and this is another thing, because I'm 5'8", 5'9".
Tall women in heels is my nightmare.
Exactly, right? And the thing is, Aberystwyth, short people.
Sure.
So, you got the nightclub photos, it would be like everybody, Mel, everybody, like aircraft looked like they could take me out. Like, I was like 6'2" most nights out.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Short person, Mel, man with a mirror, short person.
Yeah. So, but I love that was the generation I was in.
Yeah, but then, as you say, then you could detag and you could get rid of it and stuff. Whereas, it being kind of like, sort of perpetually there, I think is really, really worrying, isn't it?
So Wales Online didn't do those sort of stories. There was lots of. So I can think of dozens of times there was stuff that we just didn't do because we didn't think it was right ethically, but also right for us as a brand.
Also, would it have really been in the public interest to ruin this man's life?
So that's the difference, right? Whereas I suppose like the Daily Mail sidebar of shame, I think about those same things, just like, worst dressed at its lowest is probably like that's a bad choice. But when you start to really zero in on somebody because it's in the public interest, because they're a celebrity, I know like Millie Bobby Brown has been like being criticised for how she's dressing and stuff. You're like, who
was this for?
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, it's getting huge amounts of clicks. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there.
That's why people are doing the journalism, is because there's an interest in that journalism. Like that's why they're writing those stories. In terms of like, I mean, I don't criticize, especially young journalists taking jobs. I wouldn't work for several publications in the UK because it doesn't fit with my kind of morality to do so.
And do you think that would have been the case when you started out? If say the Daily Mail came to you when you were like when GB News started, or was it Talk TV? I think it was GB News hired a ton of regional reporters in Wales, didn't they? Like who were fresh out of uni, and obviously people thinking this is my first on camera.
Some of the big
role.
tabloids have offered me jobs over the years, and I haven't taken them because I don't want to work there. I wouldn't have ever taken them, but also I came to journalism. I started when I was 26. So as a bit older, and also had already worked and put a deposit down on a house, so I didn't have the same financial imperatives. But it is really true. I think I do have an issue with when people talk about clickbait because I talked to you about this thing about why clickbait annoys me.
No, go for it, please.
I don't think so.
Sorry. Basically, I'm going to do a headline. You're going to tell me if this is clickbait. Okay. The horrific moment a Ford goes across 3 lines of traffic and nearly wipes out family of 4. Clickbait?
I mean, to me, it feels clickbaity.
Yeah, it's quite sort of adjective heavy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So clickbait is, 2 broad definitions of clickbait is, the first one is when you click on something and it's just not what was described.
Right.
You click on a story and it's buy this Viagra.
I've been there, buddy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 16 times and get a yearly subscription, shame on me. 35, well.
But the most common kind of clickbait I think that annoys people is when it's a gross exaggeration of the content.
Sure.
So my argument with that thing about goes across 5 lanes of traffic, if that is an exact description of what has happened in that video, that isn't clickbait. That is an exact. Every single headline you've ever read has one purpose, and it's to make you click on it.
Right.
Like you don't. If you see like a Mars bar advert, you don't go, "Oh, buy bait."
Oh, I see. Okay.
So if it is misleading and says, this thing, if you see something saying like, "Oh, Bradley Walsh absolutely furious in the chase after answer," and he's just gone,
sure.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Massive clickbait. That is. But if it is a literal description of what is in the story, that isn't clickbait. It might be. You might find it distasteful. You might find it a bit
a bad
but
headline.
But it isn't clickbait. It's doing what every headline has ever tried to do. The hard thing is now, people used to buy newspapers and they'd open them and go, "Oh, what is the news?" Now you've got to go to them. Here is news. Here is news. Here is news.
Yeah.
Like every front page is clickbait. If you want to, it is baits for you to buy.
I guess those A boards outside news agents from back in the day, like those sort of splashes there. That's what that was, right?
Yeah. Diana dead as a headline is but trying to get you to buy that
what?
newspaper.
Sorry.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. You need people to read your journalism, and I can guarantee, like, the amount of people who said, "Why don't you do an explainer on how the Zenith works?" I'm like, because no fucker will read it.
Yeah.
That's why, like, with and different places will have different types of headlines that will work. Like a Guardian headline to attract a Guardian reader reads different to a Wales Online headline to attract a Wales Online reader. Like one of the biggest changes that I had going from Wales Online to the Guardian is I use longer words now. I was in such a Wales Online mentality because readers will disengage with it. Like my newsletter, I use a totally different headline to what I use in the Guardian.
And do you think that's a chicken and egg situation though? Do you think who is a Wales Online reader? Do they have like demographics of, because I read Wales Online. Would I describe myself as a Wales Online reader? Probably not.
I always think you've got to think about a website as a newspaper. It's broad. So there's people who buy a newspaper for the sport. So you might be a Wales Online rugby reader. You might read the Wales that went after a Wales International. You might follow it for M4 or traffic updates.
Yeah.
That might be why you read it. And so you have pockets of readers within it. And that was the same with newspapers. Like a lot of people would be like, "Oh yeah, that people are buying that newspaper for the political analysis. They're buying it for the crossword," like me and you both do with the eye.
Yeah.
So it's, and I think the thing is now we can actually realize more because of the internet what people are interested in. And the thing to bear in mind is newspapers are declining before the internet. It wasn't.
Right, okay.
Newspaper sales were declining before the internet came in. And I think a big part of that is they were not fulfilling they weren't seen as useful to their readers as they were before. And a big part of that, I think, is because people didn't engage with what people were interested in reading. And unfortunately, we haven't got a populace which is wants just really highbrow political journalism all the time.
No.
Sure, you can see that with sort of voting turnout, right? Like,
Yeah.
But so at what point did newspaper readership?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know I think it was kind of early 90s. Like you saw
Interesting.
the decline before internet was like.
And do you think that's like onset of more telly news?
Well,
Like when did 24 Hour come in? Like with Sky and stuff, and with digital TV.
yeah, it is. But also, what's interesting is where, especially for regional news, areas which have got London's a bit of an exception because London is kind of its own thing, but areas which have got big turnover in population, so they have quite a transient population, you often saw regional papers do decline quicker because people are not associated with that area. Whereas places where no one moves in, no one moves out, actually the local paper kept going for a lot longer because people were buying it because of an identity with the area. So it can be down. It'll be down to lots of things, as always. It'll be down to difference in how people absorb news, like as you say, things like TV. It'll be people are busier. Like people don't. I mean, sitting down and perusing a paper.
That's the reason I don't buy them. Who has the fucking time?
That would feel like such a treat, and I'd spend the whole time then feeling guilty that I'm sat there reading when I could just get it on the go.
30 pages.
Yeah.
Can't read 30 pages of a book in the morning.
No, imagine. But do you know my favourite type of media was whenever there was a little flurry of snow. So you'd wake up in the morning and there was a little flurry and everyone would tune in to our local radio station, so we Radio Ceredigion, to see if we were going into school that day.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys have this?
You'd all be like, it's settling.
Yeah. Turn on the radio. I really think, no disrespect to Radio Ceredigion if it's still going, I think about 3 people listened every day. Those snow days, that's going up 50,000%, you know?
Yeah. Snow is like breaks the internet. So
really,
yeah. If when Beast in the East happened, we were like pouring stories out about it, and my most read story was so you can access all the traffic cameras for all motorways and A roads in Wales. You could just go to.
Oh, wow.
If you go
Can I do that?
Yeah. Just go to. I think it's go to trafficcamswales.com or .co.uk.
So doing that.
If you want to sponsor us, do.
And they switch them off when there's accidents. So journalistically, you want to like. Get on quick. I sound like such a fucking vulture.
Wow.
Obviously,
No, that makes sense,
to be
though,
clear, we would never show an actual accident,
No.
the physical accident. And especially like if it's just happened and you don't want to just show a red Ford Vauxhall Corsa because that is just awful for any family with a Vauxhall Corsa.
Yes.
But what you want is, because the visual side of journalism is massive, you want to have that big line of traffic. So that's when we'd use it to show like, long tailbacks on the M4. But we did a thing during VC and this is what every road in Cardiff, in Wales looks like. And it was just bang, bang, bang. And it was just empty, full of snow with like some abandoned cars. And it was like 2.5 million views.
Wow.
Do you remember when there was the earthquake? And like almost nothing happened.
I don't remember this.
A few,
Pass me by.
a few patio chairs fell over.
Yeah.
We will rebuild.
Yeah.
And that just does like crazy, crazy high numbers. It's people are just some of the stuff like Carol Vorderman peaks at a certain time of the evening. We've said that. Vorders does well.
Yeah. The power of Vorders.
Yeah.
I'd love to be that.
By the power of orders.
Consonant, please, Carol. Shall we move on? I think
Let's.
we've done that.
Yes.
As the weather's getting a little bit better, it's nice to be outside and just see the bit more sunlight. Eating outdoors, al fresco Welsh cuisine. You guys?
Well fresco?
Well fresco.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
very,
love it.
very nice. I really like the sort of pop-up foodie places though. It's nice, isn't it? Like proper nice little day out.
Yeah, outside street food. Well, do you know what is great to get some street food out of if you do want to dine al fresco? Is a shipping container restaurant or eatery.
They don't need planning permission, do they?
They don't need the same kind of planning permission.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely true, because they're temporary. You can plug and go as well.
Yeah, plug in and play.
Exactly. And also, you don't need the same commitment as bricks and mortar. You don't need the same planning permission. So it's a really good kind of shop front for your food business.
So if you want to quit the rat race and live the dream and be somebody selling their food for sweet, sweet dollar,
My goodness gracious.
a great place to do it would be a shipping container.
I'm really hungry.
Absolutely. Should we all go and find our own individual shipping container eatery now and then report back which one was the best?
Makes me think a bit like Roller Coaster Tycoon or Theme Park, where you used to sort of like, did you ever do
Theme
that?
Park.
Yes.
I love Theme Park World.
Yeah.
That's great stuff. If you were to get a shipping container, where would you go?
Where would I go?
Yeah, where would you purchase a shipping container from?
I would go for Lion Containers. I think that's the only obvious choice, to be honest
I think
with
that's
you.
fair enough. Stupid question.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, where can we find them? I think it's www.lioncontainers.co.uk.
I think it is there.
Yeah.
We should go there now.
Yeah, let's go now.
Guys, you might notice we've got lots of paper in front of us. At the live show, we asked people to supply
ASMR paper.
we asked people to supply questions for us for the second half of the show, and we couldn't get to all the questions because there was literally dozens and dozens and dozens. Yeah. So we've got some, and we're going to whiz through them and try and answer as many as we can.
Absolutely.
But Melanie, you have got a.
You got full name.
I
there.
did, Melanie Carmen Owen.
Yeah.
No, I do have all the Carmen. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
You actually got a question on Instagram.
Yes, I did. Well, it was actually Twitter, and it was from Jamie Walker. I assume he wants to be named. I'm translating this as I go, so bear with me.
Is it in Welsh?
It is, yeah. With all of the Rupert Lowe drama this weekend and the possible reform implosion, what is the effect that's going to have on reform in Wales?
So for people who don't know, the Rupert Lowe situation, Rupert Lowe used to be the chairman of Southampton Football Club, and he is one of the 4 Reform MPs. There's been a huge split. So because of the nature of some of the accusations that have been against him and the fact there's ongoing investigations and it's been referred to the police, we're not going to speak about the specifics of what has or hasn't happened with Rupert Lowe. But essentially, there is a bit of a power struggle within Reform at the moment, with many members really annoyed that Farage is kind of treating it as his own little fiefdom. There's been accusations made against Rupert Lowe. He's had the whip withdrawn. It's very tit for tat. It's very parties on the right of politics just going nuts at each other.
It feels quite UKIP-y, doesn't it? It's sort of like
so UKIP-y.
You know,
Also, these people being like, they were angry that Nigel Farage is treating this as his kingdom. What did they expect?
Yeah. He owned it as a company.
yeah.
What do you think you're in?
It is wild withdrawing the whip from 25% of your party, though, isn't it?
That is bold. It is a bold move. Kind of respect it.
Yeah, it'd be like Keir Starmer withdrawing the whip from 75.
Yeah. Well, give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Jane Dodd removing the whip from half of her body.
Chopping her leg off.
Naughty down here, party up top. I don't think it will have any impact on in terms of I think Bran Farage is what
people are voting for.
Yeah, I think so, and I think in Wales it's a separate issue from here.
Sure,
I think it is it's the people. I assume the people who are voting Reform in Wales are doing it the majority of the time as a signal to the Welsh Government and what they consider to have been 25 years of incumbency and not improving people's lives. I think that's what people in Wales will be voting Reform for.
And they're not necessarily holding Reform up to a standard where we expect morality. Nobody's voting, I'm assuming nobody's voting Reform because they're doing the right thing. They're a moral upstanding party. I don't think that nobody's going to care about this if they vote for Reform.
But I don't think they're doing it for there's currently no manifesto, right? Or what do they say? It's not a manifesto, it's
the pledges.
The pledges, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, sensibly.
Yeah.
So but the whatever, it's not based on policy at the moment.
Yes.
I think it is literally I am unhappy. It's a very similar thing to the Brexit vote, right? It's protest. This is a protest vote, I think.
So I'm not being listened to.
Yeah.
And Nigel Farage listens to me.
Exactly. So I think the nitty gritty of it, I don't know what would have to happen for people to be turned off by it. I wonder whether Farage's sort of reluctancy to criticise Trump over Ukraine. I think that would be more of a red line for people than this Rupert Lowe stuff.
Yeah, it's the Ukraine stuff is very interesting, isn't it? Because most people in this country who are, will fly the Union Jack and be like, rule Britannia, probably do want to see us defend Ukraine.
Yeah.
So then them who would also then adore Trump, seeing his stance on it, I wonder, they must be so conflicted.
Yeah. It's interesting. It actually adds nuance to an issue which seems quite black and white before. I assume most, but equally, there must be Reform voters who dislike Trump. There must be.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's not all tiring everybody and
at least Reform voters who just don't care. It doesn't enter their kind.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect Wales.
I think you're right. two ways. I think we saw before the election, the general election, that one of the only times that Farage saw a decline in popularity was when he failed to properly support Ukraine and speak out in favour of Ukraine. People in the UK and actually in the US don't really like Vladimir Putin, which is at least slightly affirming. I think you're right that I don't think a person who is inclined to vote Reform in Wales sees what's happening in Reform now and goes, "Oh God, I'm not voting for them now."
Yeah.
Only way I think it could have a difference is if it makes it harder for them to mobilise activists ahead of an election, because the activists and the people who are properly engaged members of the party are turned off by it and don't want to get out and pound the streets.
Because it seems like a toxic environment.
Well, because they don't feel like they're not happy with the leadership. So if they feel that, because it's grassroots engaged Reform members who are trying to be councillors, who are prospective candidates that are frustrated. It's not like your average person on the street. It's people who are engaged in the party who feel like, actually, you're not giving us any role here. They're the people who are frustrated with Farage. So that could have an impact, but it's not going to be massive. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference at all.
Interesting. I have a question that's sort of slightly linked off this.
Cool.
And it is, what are your predictions for the Senate elections? Will Reform do as well as they're projected? So I think current projections are, I believe the last thing I saw was Labour at 25%, Reform and Plaid around 24%, I think was the last one that I saw.
Yeah, I mean, Labour, Plaid and Reform have all been ahead in different polls, but they're all around a quarter of the vote.
What do we think?
I think they'll do better.
You think Reform will do better than that? You think they'll go
I think so. Just
biggest party better?
No, I don't think biggest party, but I think they'll have so much sway, and that on a personal level that really scares me. But I think just kind of looking historically, these types of protest votes are always under predicted. And,
sure.
So I always, whenever there is an opportunity for a protest or to be like revolutionary and we want to shake things up and rebel, they're always underestimated and everyone's shocked on the night as if this hasn't happened in every election in the last 15 years. That's my prediction.
So you think, not biggest party, but strong official opposition?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think we'll end up in a scenario where other parties are going to have to come together to stop them from being a minority leader. I don't know if that can happen in the Senate. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know in this new system as well. Say Reform got, my maths is, there'll be 90 seats. Say they got 35 seats and Labour and Plaid got, I don't know, my maths is fucking shit.
So you're saying they're significantly the largest party, but short of a majority. Could they have a minority government?
Correct.
Yes.
They could. The minority governments rely on working with other parties continuously to get different legislation through and kind of making deals.
Jane Dodds.
I don't think I think unless the Tories do better than people think, I think it'll be really hard for them to be a minority government, because I just don't think they'll be able to pass anything, because it'll be in the interest of everyone to stop them being able to do it.
Do we think the Welsh Conservatives would prop them up?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Do you? The Welsh, I've spoke to fairly senior people in the Welsh Tories who are, and it's just so pathetic, but they are giddy with glee because they see Reform as like their ticket to have some arm in government as a junior partner.
So like sort of like the side friends of like a bully, like with a jacket. It's like, get him.
Yeah. To quote the famous Robin Morgan, beta cucks.
Yeah.
Do you know, that is the
absolute beta cuck move. Thank you.
What's your prediction?
We are just over a year out. So much can change with it, but I can't see I can't see it moving much. I think it's 3-horse race.
Yeah.
I think Labour will get more than Plaid just.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I think it'll be really close. I think they've got a year to do it, and they'll have some policy. And I think there's signs that they're engaging more with people, and I think there will be a worry from people on the left of and arguably the centre of a Reform resurgence. And I think people will, similarly to a UK general election, start voting tactically as well in this one.
Interesting.
With more people being engaged and more people talking about it.
And that works, really well for a lot of seats in the last UK government election to try and get Tories out. That worked really well in certain seats. So you could see them trying to do that again here.
Yeah. Before I ask you yours, before the actual results, and obviously we should do an actual numerical guess for all of us, and closest wins the mugs.
All three of them.
All the mugs.
Yeah. And then I've got to bring them every week.
If I do that, my mugs to friends ratio will be very skewed.
What's yours?
As stands now.
I think the thing I liked about your prediction. I think that Labour could have a bit of a mini surge if there was acknowledgement by UK Labour of the problem. I don't think they will acknowledge it though. So I'll give you a very detailed prediction. I think Plaid are, Reform are the largest party. They get the most seats. Just. I think Plaid are second or almost equal to them, and Labour are just behind them. I think what ends up happening is you end up with I don't think Plaid go into a coalition with Labour. I think the Greens and Plaid come together. So maybe there's 2 or 3 Greens. Plaid and the Greens have a lot of overlaps in policies. They're both pro-indie. They're both on pretty pro-environment. There's a lot of kind of overlapping there in terms of worldview. I think Plaid and the Greens come together, and they say it's a coalition, but essentially there's Anthony Slaughter, the Green leader, has a role in government. Maybe he's in charge of the environment. Maybe they make environment minister. Something like that. They then, as a pair, enter into a cooperation agreement with Welsh Labour. So Welsh Labour are not part of the government, but they enter a cooperation agreement with those two parties.
Looking for a third.
Looking for a part of the throuple.
Yeah.
I think there'll be advantages of that for them in terms of it won't be all of the parties with Reform in opposition, because I think that would give Reform a lot of power.
Yeah. Well, that's what they want. That's how they do best, arguably.
Yeah. So I could see that situation occurring at this point.
Interesting.
I think there'll be mass kicking off if Reform are the biggest party and don't end up being in government. And I think we're going to make the problem worse.
Do you think so? Yeah.
Because if you push these, because that's not democratic.
No.
I think those people who already feel not listened to are going to go, what did we say?
You're not listening to the vote. You're not doing Brexit.
Yeah.
I think you're right that those people will kick off. I think if Reform end up with 27% of the vote, though, and everyone else is below them, you can still make the argument that 73% of Wales didn't vote Reform.
Yeah.
And so we've entrenched it. We've created a system now where there can't be a majority. It's almost impossible for it to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it will, I think the Reform voters and the Tories will try and kick off a lot about it. And I think they'll be angry, but I think they're always angry. I think the majority of people, I think Labour is so fatigued now. I couldn't see them actually fighting. I think a cooperation agreement they'd kind of suit, because it'd give them a role in driving policy, but they wouldn't have the day-to-day governance. I think all Plaid want is the first ministership. That's the biggest thing. But I think you are right, people will kick off if Reform are the biggest party and are not in government, but also they can't make the maths work.
Yeah.
Sure.
But there is a situation where them and the Tories just scrape over the line. That is a possibility.
Yeah.
But it would be close.
Yeah.
It's incredibly close, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I said the name Anthony Slaughter to you, what party would you think he's part of?
I think Slaughter. I feel we've talked about him. Slaughter. Well, not green, but it is green, isn't it? It is green.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So
I do love it. I love it so much.
I love the idea that, we were talking about answering the phone earlier. His kids go, the slaughterhouse.
Beautiful.
Slaughterhouse. 0920 666 6666.
Amazing. I've got one last question, which we'll do very quickly, because I think we'll save some for next week.
Yeah.
Who will lead Welsh Labour next? So the current leader of Welsh Labour is Eluned Morgan.
And is this assuming that if Eluned doesn't, they don't get... I mean, how badly do they have to do for her to step down, I suppose?
I think she stays leader if they have a role in government. I think if they are in opposition, I think she steps down. You can't have the worst ever Labour result in Wales in 100 years and stay.
No.
Yeah.
But like Rishi staying on, right?
Shall I give my views on this?
Yeah,
I know quite a lot of the... I think that the second that Jeremy Miles lost to Vaughan Gething, his supporters were saying, we are going to go again.
I was going to say Jeremy Miles.
Go on.
No, I was good on vibes. No, I just feel because he's so talented in his experience and he's probably one of the most obvious candidates that he hasn't had his day in the sun yet. So my prediction would have been Jeremy Miles just basically on that. But you please say something more intelligent.
Has he been health minister?
He's currently health minister.
Then there we go then. As it was foretold. By the power of Voldemort.
But borders. I think that if Labour, and there's no guarantee they will, they might do better than the polls suggest in the next election. It's all within a margin of error. It's so close. But if they do poorly in the next election, there will be an inquiry within the party, not like an official one, but people will be saying, what the hell has happened here? And the result will be, which happens after every single party loses, we moved away from our core values and our base. And there will be an argument that we were not Welsh enough. We were too close to the UK party. There will be a desire for the clear red water, for the creation of a more Welsh-defined Welsh Labour.
Build a wall.
There could be an argument for a proper split. I don't think it will happen, but people could make that argument. And Jeremy Miles is seen as like the more Welsh end of Welsh Labour. He's not a kind of... Gethin was very close. He was a more Blairite, close to like Starmer, whereas Jeremy Miles wasn't, which was part of the reason
why...
He's
more sort of Mike Drakeford mould, right? Sort of...
Yeah. And I think there will be a movement within the party to want to move back to that red water. And I think Jeremy Miles is already positioned there. The problem they've got is the divides between the Gethin camp and the Miles camp are so bitter that there's some Gethin supporters who will be like anyone other than him. We hate him.
Still.
Yeah, 100%. But a lot of people are stepping down. Gethin won't be in the party then. Like some of the big supporters of Miles won't be in the party. There'll be lots of new blood. So who knows how that will play out? But I think Jeremy Miles is the most likely. I'm not saying he'd be good at it, but I'm saying he's the most likely.
Yeah, in terms of sort of big name talent in the party, I think it kind of has to be him.
And if you were to say Jeremy Miles I would say everyone in Wales, I would say 90% won't know who he is.
No, but you could say Jeremy Miles, he's the one who didn't dump toxic waste.
I mean, you could say the same about Robin Morgan.
Let's not be confident.
He did.
You know I love...
You get some toxic waste.
You know I love fracking.
Amazing. Guys, I think we've reached a natural end 20 minutes ago and we're still going.
We're still here.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much to ACT Training for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Anyone for any more?
No. I just think if anyone likes apprenticeships, wants to do an apprenticeship, or wants to be an employer taking on apprentices, go to acttraining.org.uk. Obviously, a big thanks to Heyman Media. They do some amazing stuff. They do podcasts, they do pictures, they do video. They help us make mugs. Big thanks to Heyman Media for all their support.
I've been Mel Owen.
I've been Robin Morgan.
And I've been hungover.
Goodbye.
Bye.